Everybody knows that there's a big three in gaming: Sony, Nintendo, and Xbox. And two of them are doing pretty good right now. I mean, honestly, all of them are still doing okay, but one of them is actually struggling, I would say. Whether they want to come out and just admit that or not is a completely different story. But I guess they technically did admit it, because this week they shuttered some of their studios that they acquired recently. If you don't know who I'm talking about, by now I'll just go ahead and do it yourself and I'll tell you. Xbox. Xbox has been in the news again, and not due to anything really good. I'm sure you know by now that you've heard that Xbox has closed studios such as Arcade Austin, the creators of Redfall, and Tango Gameworks, the creators of Hi-Fi Rush and The Evil Within, amongst other studios. These moves honestly shocked gamers and gaming industry as a whole. And get this, the day after closing Tango, Xbox came out and said it needed more games like Hi-Fi Rush, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I guess I don't even know what's going on anymore. And to top that off, listen to what the president of Xbox had to say during a recent interview about the closure of the studio.
It was most upsetting both to Xbox gamers and to employees is that, one of the shuttered studios in particular just created a hit game, did really well on Game Pass in terms of engagement, and won a ton of awards. Shouldn't succeeding in that way ensure the future of a studio?
One of the things I really love about the games industry is it's a creative art form. And it means that the situation and what success is for each game and studio is also really unique. Like, there's no one size fits all to it for us. And so we look at each studio, each game team, and we look at a whole variety of factors when we're faced with sort of making decisions and trade-offs like that. But it all comes back to our long-term commitment to the games we create, the devices we build, the services, and ensuring that we're setting ourselves up to be able to deliver on those promises.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And the reason I decided to share that with you is because there was actually nothing of substance said there. That's what I felt like. I'm not sure why she was up there. It really should have been like Phil or somebody else up there to be able to explain what was going on, because she probably has a career in politics with the way that she just spun that around back to the questioner. But I mean, yikes. Not a good look. We're going to move on. And let's just do a quick history lesson here so we can kind of go through all the stuff that's happened to Microsoft so we know what's going on right now. This isn't the first time that Xbox has dealt with adversity. That seems kind of like a strong word, but just let me explain. Back in 2005, Microsoft was riding pretty high with the release of the Xbox 360. They honestly probably could do no wrong in gamers' eyes, except somehow they managed to do wrong, I guess. In an attempt to outpace Sony's PlayStation 3, Xbox rushed the 360 out to consumers without properly testing the units. This subsequently led to the dreaded Red Ring of Death, and I, like many others, suffered from this with multiple consoles. In fact, it's reported that the failure rate for consoles was a whopping 54%, and on top of that, after initial repairs, the failure rate was still upwards of 40%. Not really a good look, which is honestly a shame, because Xbox 360 was regarded as one of the best consoles ever, and the exclusives for Xbox at that period of time was just huge for the console, but we're going to get to exclusivity more in a bit. Xbox's next generation of consoles would also suffer from issues. Not really due to technological issues, but due to some horrible business decisions made by then current head of Microsoft Gaming, Don Mattrick. Xbox was doing great. The Xbox Live subscriber base was huge. Kinect was actually kind of fun, and the music features of Xbox Live were actually a hit too. But when the Xbox One released, for some godforsaken reason that nobody will ever be able to truly explain, Xbox debuted the console as not really a gaming console, but an entertainment console. And now I know what you're thinking. Aren't a gaming console and entertainment console the same? Not really in Microsoft's eyes. See, Don wanted the Xbox One to focus more on the television, movie side of entertainment than the gaming side. And for a console that was created and mostly made its reputation on gaming, that really didn't sit well with the Xbox fan base. Another problem with the Xbox One's release was that there was a requirement for a constant internet connection. The company actually made a good choice here and, recanted that following backlash from gamers and some memeing from fellow competitors. But the reputation had already taken a hit, and looking back on it, it shows. The PlayStation 4 doubled the Xbox One in sales, which kind of started the whole downfall of Xbox as a gaming console. Now that we've taken a little ride down Xbox's rocky past, we can talk about the current state of the company and console. Phil Spencer has now taken over the duties of head of Xbox and was supposed to be the one thing that dragged Xbox back to the pinnacle of gaming. But in his time, Xbox has made some questionable business decisions with their business model, and people are still kind of baffled by it. They've been busy buying up studios in order to compete with Sony and its monopoly on console exclusives, and Xbox was supposed to start competing more heavily with Sony in this field, especially with the purchases of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. They actually dumped over $75 billion into these companies, and as of right now, they really have nothing to show for it. Sure, Bethesda dropped their much-awaited new IP Starfield as an Xbox and PC exclusive, but it did little to compete with Sony's exclusives. And Activision Blizzard hasn't really done much either, as it seems like the plan for their games, such as Call of Duty, are still going to be multi-platform releases, which I'm okay with, but Xbox stands maybe not so much. Speaking of exclusives, Xbox has been lagging behind on that for quite some time. Gears of War hasn't really been relevant since the third game, and Halo is kind of a dumpster fire, partly due to the crappy live service model that it's taken over. And to be fair, Bungie is what made Halo so great. And ironically, Bungie is now making very popular exclusives for Team Blue. Another part of the problem is that Xbox has put all of its chips into the Game Pass basket. In theory, for gamers, Game Pass is an amazing concept, but for developers and Microsoft, not so much. It has kind of backfired on them because people in the Xbox ecosystem usually will still buy the physical media. However, people on the fence usually do not. Instead of being forced to buy a new console and, the games, the people will just go log into their PC and try it out on Game Pass for a little bit and see if they like it or not. And then if they do, they'll just continue to play it on there. Especially since Xbox has decided to make some of their biggest releases available on day one. For some reason, there's also sort of a stigma around Game Pass. I'm not too sure if it's because people are unaware and think Game Pass is just for indie games or not, but there are people out there with the mindset that if it's releasing straight to Game Pass, it must not be very good, because Sony would never do something like that. I'm not sure what their plan is and if Game Pass is even sustainable going forward, but Xbox definitely has to come up with something, and something soon. And there have been rumblings that Xbox is going to just turn focus from consoles in the future and just strictly to game development. This would be huge, as it would mean that Sony and Nintendo would be the last two competitors in the kind of, high performance console market. Kind of fitting, since that they're kind of mortal enemies, but not so good for us consumers. Having options when it comes to hardware is important, not just to us, but as the gaming sphere as a whole. If a single company were to have the majority of the market share, then they would be able to do, whatever they wanted to do with it when it comes to gaming and software and, other hardware. It could also lead to a lack of innovation and complacency from whoever is running the sphere. I'm not saying Xbox is going to close up shop now. I'm just saying that it's important that they still try to remain in the console business, at least for the foreseeable future. Granted, it may not make much sense financially to do so, as sales are down 30% year over year. And Xbox, like Sony, actually does lose money on their, console sales, upwards of $100 to $200 per unit. It's actually really troubling. It's a really troubling time for us gamers and developers. People are always on the verge of losing their livelihood and ability to care for themselves and their families. Gamers are getting charged more and more for games. Publishers are cramming more and more microtransactions down our throats in order to pad already record-breaking profits. It's kind of a microcosm of the economy as a whole, but it's still very frustrating. I believe I speak for us all, when I say things like that, and I really hope that Xbox is able to get back to creating great games, from their brand, and that they don't just give up on us console gamers, who have followed them for decades for now. But honestly, time can only really tell. Listen, I could sit here and talk for hours about the gradual decline of Xbox. And when I say things like that, I'm not trying to be like a Sony fanboy or a Nintendo fanboy. It's just, it's happening with Xbox before our eyes, and it's very, very disheartening. Again, I'm not a Sony fanboy, but Sony's current model seems to actually be working kind of for them. I know they're not in the best position either. They're still making a shit ton of money, but they have their own struggles. Not really with the same things that Xbox does, but with their business models as well. Look at what the old Helldivers 2 situation that occurred recently. Look at how that ended up. Plus, PlayStation is going to be bringing more ports over to PC, so it's too early to see how that is all going to work out, but we'll just have to monitor that as we go along. I really hope that Xbox can kind of get their ducks in a row here. I would hate for them just to turn into like a producer of video games instead of the hardware as well, because the Xbox 360 was a great console. The Xbox Series S and X are actually pretty good consoles as well, and it would be a shame for them to bow out of this place because their business practices and what supposedly the savior of the company, Phil Spencer, was supposed to do with the company. I am not in that position. I can't say that I would do anything different, but I think us as gamers feel like things could be taken care of in a different way The Xbox brand can be represented a little bit more. And if the people in charge would just stop lying to us kind of about what's going on with the company and with the studios, I think that would go a long way too. Transparency really does go a long way with gamers. And hopefully going forward, Xbox can make some changes, whether it be in their company structure with whoever's running what, or whatever the case is. I want to thank everybody for watching the video. I appreciate it very, very much, more than you guys probably ever know. But, I appreciate you listening to my opinions. And if you have your own opinions, I would love to hear them down in the comments below. I would love to have, a conversation about this to see what you guys think is the best for the company going forward. Please don't hesitate to like the video if you've enjoyed it. It really helps the channel grow and be seen by other people. And if you want more videos like this and to be notified when I drop new content, hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell. And as always, you guys, we'll see you on the next one.